We know that they know they've committed forms of treason, and they knew the implications joining the EU, what it was going to do to this country's sovereignty. They knew that. So that's openly doing something, even knowing that it is unconstitutional, that it is.
Yeah.
I know it's a heavy word, but to me, it is treason.
Yeah. Let's go. Hey folks, Gavin here from Sovereign Empowerment again, and I'm joined by another Damien here, good friend. And so this is a different video, right? This is going to be a big video. You're going to need to take notes. You're going to need to pause it. But what Damien's going to go into today is our Constitution. Maybe a slightly controversial subject. There may be folks out there watching right now that have already dismissed this Constitution. Damien, when he woke up like a lot of us, he got into the law, he did his research like a lot of us, but it took him in a different direction. And he's done a lot of research into the history of how our legal system came to be, really the subversion that's happened over hundreds and hundreds of years to take us to this point. So there's some controversial points that will be made here, but we want to bring the message out. This video is going to be designed for you guys to stop it and do your research, because there's quite a lot to this. And so there's not going to be a lot of back and forth, because I know that if we did do that, and Damien said if we ended up doing that, we could be here for 6 hours. And after a certain point, you guys might fall asleep. This is going to be a presentation of all of the information, all of the facts of history to really put across the message that we want to put out there, that it's simply that the question would be that you guys maybe need to answer, is our Constitution the 1215 Magna Carta? Now, with that said, Damien, welcome. Thanks for giving us your time here, my man. Do you want to just give a brief sort of intro as to who you are, and then we'll just get into it?
Yeah, of course. Cheers for having me on and giving me the opportunity to have a chat to your audience. How I started, this is going to sound completely different from what we're discussing here. I actually started listening to a guy called David Icke. I don't know if any of your audience or yourself are aware of that guy, but I started around probably early 2000s. Watched the seminar, a video of David Icke, and he went on about world leaders, all kinds of conspiracies, and that started like me on this path. And then a bit later on, I came away from that, because you have to just carry on living, don't you? It fades into the background. Apart from like the shock horror of this kind of being exposed to this kind of information, it was just like, you just get back into life and got kids and all that kind of stuff. But probably about 2008, I started looking at constitutional law surrounding like EU stuff and stuff like that. So I started looking at a guy called David Robinson. And again, he's a big advocate for the Magna Carta. And that's when I was first exposed. Loads of good stuff, interesting stuff, loads of history, a lot to do with what was going on with the legal system and stuff like that. Again, I've stepped away from it a little bit, because there was a lot of people kind of rubbishing that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I've stepped away from the Magna Carta a little bit for the short instance, and I started looking at like law as it is, the actual rule of law we've got now. And that's probably close to around the time I started talking to you about council tax and stuff like that, and how to beat the system and use the system against them and all that kind of stuff. But then I became a little bit disillusioned with that as well. So I came back to the Magna Carta, and I thought, I'm going to give this another go. I'm going to like really dig deep into it and do my own research and look at these kind of directions of what to read and stuff like that. So I just thought to myself, if I want to know what's going on now, I'm best going to the beginning, where it started, and try and find truth type thing. And this is where I've been for like the last couple of years now, researching this and reading books. So that's what's brought all this about now, to try and get this out there into consciousness. There are a lot of other people doing this kind of stuff and trying to get this information out as well. But I thought I'll give it a little bit of a different approach. I wanted to do a presentation and slides and stuff like that. So this is where we are now.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, my man. Let's get into the presentation now then.
I would like to start by asking a few questions. Does Parliament have absolute power to do as it pleases? Parliamentary sovereignty?
No.
Are there any restraints and limitations? Does the UK have a constitution? Do we live in a democracy? Is it referenda, suffrage, majority voting? What stops government from becoming criminal in nature? Is the UK government operating under the system they should be operating under? So are we under a tyranny or a democracy? So I'm not going to answer them questions. I'm going to just move on to the next slides, and hopefully these questions will be answered. So obviously, does the UK have a constitution? So there's a little quote here from Aristotle, Greek philosopher. A constitution is the arrangement of magistracies in a state, especially of the highest of all. The government is everywhere sovereign in the state, and the constitution is in fact the government. So I went to the UK Parliament's website just to see what their take on all this stuff was. So this is word for word what it said on that website. Parliamentary sovereignty is a principle of the UK Constitution. It makes Parliament the supreme legal authority in the UK, which can create or end any law. Generally, the court cannot overrule its legislation, and no Parliament can pass laws that future Parliaments cannot change. Parliamentary sovereignty is the most important part of the UK Constitution. So we can see from that first statement what Parliament think, what the government thinks. A constitution is the set of principles and rules by which a country is organised, and is usually contained, move this out the way, in one document. In the UK, a constitution has never been codified in this way. Instead, various statutes, conventions, judicial decisions, and treaties, which taken together govern how the UK is run and referred to collectively as the British Constitution. So clearly, it's stating here that, the various statutes, conventions, and judicial decisions are what is collectively known as the British Constitution. So move on to referendum. A referendum is when a question is decided by putting it to a public vote. Referendums are an example of direct democracy in the UK. Most decisions are made by Parliament on behalf of the public, which is known as indirect or representative democracy. So their play on words here, direct democracy, representative democracy, it's not, as far as I'm concerned, it's not true democracy. Referendums, it clearly isn't democracy, because 49% of the votes can vote for something, 51 can vote against. So in this country, you'd be talking about like 30 million of that vote that didn't agree or did agree to something. Not everyone's happy, are they? So
No.
it can't be classed as democracy as far as I'm concerned.
I think the other thing to just say there just quickly is that, and we know this to be true, but in a system like that, it's wide open to compromise. And we know that happens. Whoever has the biggest pockets can buy the most votes. And in a system like that, it's very easy to subvert it.
Yeah.
I think the question is, we've been pretty, let's say the question, it's been done. That's exactly what's happened, isn't it? Which is why we're here today.
This is what we're experiencing in this country as democracy, basically. This is the illusion that the general public are being given to have a say. But it's not really having a say, is it? As I've just explained, you're talking about like 30 million people could not be happy with the way a certain vote has gone. It's just,
Exactly.
It's ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
So this one on royal assent, I found royal assent is the monarch's agreement that is required to make a bill into an act of parliament. While the monarch has the right to refuse royal assent, nowadays this does not happen. The last such occasion was in 1708, and royal assent is regarded today as a formality.
which is so dangerous, isn't it?
It's a contradiction as well, isn't it?
Ridiculous. Yeah.
In one sense, it's saying, oh, the monarch must give royal assent for the bill to be passed as an act. And then saying it's a formality. It just happens. Doesn't matter what the bill is. It's a formality now. This is how arrogant I would say that the establishment is. That there's no sort of restraints. Even the restraints we've got in place, like the royal prerogative, like royal assent, it's almost took the reins of being a tyrant. It used to be the king, and something like the Bill of Rights has been obviously written to control a tyrant king, but we've replaced it with the same thing. Parliament, it's just like another power grab, isn't it? To take control, where people haven't really got any say in the matter.
Exactly. If I could just jump in very quickly, just for people that are maybe new to this, and this is like completely like never heard of this, and they didn't even know that Parliament had claimed to be sovereign. The fact that they're stating that royal assent is a formality, that's meant to be the thing that can stop these unlawful acts of Parliament getting passed. But because they're now saying it's a formality, if you go back to the first part that Parliament is sovereign, that should scare you. Because if that thing's subverted, which I think we could safely say has happened, then you've essentially got a tyrannous regime playing out. So just bear that in mind as Damien goes further into this presentation.
So another thing is parliamentary privilege, which kind of, again, it grants certain legal immunities for members of both houses without any sort of interference. Again, it's like the green light, isn't it? To do, nothing can be said later on, regardless. We know what we've experienced recently with COVID. It's just everything's engineered for the establishment to do what he wants. So this is what we experience in this country. We rely on political parties to have certain policies that kind of resonate with you for you to vote for them. So it's not actually something that's coming from the people. It's coming from a political party, and you've got to take a stab at the best of a worst bunch based on a certain policy. It won't be the whole policy. It might just be, oh, don't like that, don't like that, don't. Oh, that's okay. This is what we're fooled into thinking that we're having a real say. Again, it comes down to that. It's just it's another form of deception, really, where the governments are saying that they're involving the people in decision making, or it's just not true. It's just, yourself, it's nonsense. Just reading that. A manifesto is a publication issued by a political party before a general election. It contains the set of policies that the party stands for and would wish to implement if elected to govern. So whose policies are they? You know what I mean? It's like, we don't really have a say in that. We just get handed a party's manifesto, and we've got to, as I said before, choose between a bad bunch who would be the best. But it's a joke, really, Gavin, isn't it? To be honest, it's so, when you're open to this and you know what's going on, and it's like the veil's been unlifted, it's ridiculous to think that we would ever fooled, or we ever believed that this was democracy or we had a say. There is people out there that still believe that this is legit, that we do have a say. And another thing, what I want to mention, we always say, oh, they've been voted into power. Voted into power, what's that mean?
Yeah.
They've been voted into office. They're meant to be doing what we say, how we want to live, the rules of society that we want to live by under our constitution and the rule of law and all that kind of stuff. That's out the window. That doesn't even come into discussion.
Yeah.
When these political parties do the door-to-door stuff, I was actually waiting for someone to knock on my door. I could say to them, listen, forget all this that you're talking about. Where do you stand with constitutional law? Our true rule of law that we should be being governed by. And just see what they've got to say. You know what I mean? But they never did. They
wouldn't know what to say. Probably wouldn't even know what the word constitution means.
So, yeah, interesting. So this is another good point here. Many changes have been effected at different times in the legal succession to the crown. A notable example are those that occurred at the Revolution of 1688-89. The power of Parliament over the crown is distinctly affirmed by the statute law and recognised as an important principle of the Constitution. So again, the stuff that people are looking at as constitutional, the Bill of Rights, it's not constitutional. And I know that might come as a shock to many. It just says it in that sentence there, the power of Parliament over the Crown. It's just another power grab. I mean, you could look at it as treasonous, if I'm being honest, because you're taking away the whole royal assent. So it's taken away the Crown's power to execute law or dispense law in a sense. So if something is unconstitutional, then our head of state should have the power to say that goes against our constitutional principles. I'm not giving assent to that. But that's not what's happening, as you've already read. And it's a formality. And I don't know whether the then Queen or now King are even able to get involved in that kind of stuff, or they have. What I'm saying is, has the Crown been usurped? Do they have a choice? Do they just have to pass whatever handed it in front of them, or their Privy Council? So
we could probably prove the answers to that question, but that's another long video, isn't it?
Yeah.
The answer to that is simply yes, isn't it?
Yeah. These are all videos in themselves. You talk for hours, to be honest. Okay, I'll quickly move on. Where does parliamentary sovereignty come from? We know it comes from the Bill of Rights and their own assert their own powers. But this guy, A.V. Dicey, said something, and it's almost like it's a mirror image of what's on the parliamentary website, like word for word. So this guy is saying the principle of parliamentary sovereignty means neither more nor less than this, namely that Parliament, this defined, has, under the English Constitution, the right to make or unmake any law whatever. And furthermore, no person or body is recognised by the law of England as having a right to override or set aside the legislation of Parliament. So this guy's basically saying that legislation is the power. We're ruled by legislation. Nobody can question it or override it. That's it. So in a sense, I would take from this, I don't know what anybody else's interpretation is. I would take it that this guy's saying that legislation has the power to punish on its own.
Yeah, that certainly doesn't make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, does it, reading that? It doesn't speak to anything positive at all.
It just says tyranny.
Yeah, exactly that.
It's like that very law. Legislation has the power to punish people. So, yeah, I thought that was a interesting quote and definitely one that encouraged what's being promoted on the parliamentary website.
One other thing I'd just like to just come in and just point out to folks is that hopefully what you're starting to see is that if you are new to this stuff, the subversion and the things that we're living through today are not things that have just happened over the last few years or even the last couple of decades. This intentional situation has been hundreds of years in the making to do what they've done. And this is essentially what Damien's going to paint out to you. So, yeah, Damien's
it is. It's an 800-year conspiracy.
Exactly that.
If I'm being honest.
Mind blowing, actually, when you get into it.
The dismantling of our constitution has been being done step by step over that period of time through different documents, different actions. A lot of it will be in here, so you will see it. I've brought this guy into it, Goebbels and Hitler and tyranny. Tyranny is defined as oppressive rule administered with injustice, the cruel and arbitrary use of authority. Tyranny is a judicial crime at common law, crime against humanity. So this is another quote from the same guys. We shall reach our goal when we have the power to laugh as we destroy, as we smash whatever was sacred to us as tradition, as education, and as human affection. So again, traditions, we're looking at our constitution, our history, our education, which is massively important. I think, I'm not too sure, to be honest. I think it was like the 50s and 60s where constitutional law was being removed from like universities and that, and from law schools and the teachings of law. So again, has that been done purposely to take us away, or even take away people who are actually in the legal profession who should know about this stuff, to like re-educate, taking that away? Again, the whole parliamentary sovereignty and legislation and what I call the fake rule of law, what we're experiencing now, that's what's being taught, like purposely. And again, these people, this is the kind of stuff, what was being said when people were trying to take over the world. And I think that's where it's headed. Globalization and the destruction of, I'd say, sovereign countries, people who've got history, people who've had constitutions and a rule of law. That's obviously been slowly dismantled over a period of time. But maybe that's what the bigger picture is. That's what the bigger agenda is, globalization. So there isn't any sovereign countries. When you can see with what's happened with the EU and that kind of stuff, how that's being brought into play. And again, if you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed. So if we keep repeating all this stuff about parliamentary sovereignty and legislation as law and all this kind of stuff, people will just start to accept it and believe it. And again, the control aspect is there. People do start to believe it. Like, I've had it loads of times. I've had that many arguments about the Magna Carta and about constitutional law. It's almost like it never existed. Like, it's been completely airbrushed out of history. Now, I don't know whether these people are just trolls or shills, or they're purposely put on Twitter and everywhere else to discredit people who are just seeking the truth. That's all it is. We're not here for anything else. I just want the facts and the truth. As probably yourself and your viewers and everybody else who's in this movement wants. Yeah, I thought they were fit into what we're talking about, because although there's no Hitler, to me, we're still heading in that direction.
Absolutely agree. It's proven as well, isn't it, that not to get down that rabbit hole, but they certainly took the psychological playbook from Goebbels and what they did and achieved.
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
say that in a positive sense achieved, but what they did from a psyop point of view in the Second World War worked. And you can see that's playing out right now. And the simple fact that talking about the Magna Carta, talk of things, become a bit of a controversial topic. And why should it be? We're just looking at history and looking at the facts that history present us and joining the dots and in a different picture.
Yeah. I just think the establishments, they don't want people talking about this. I don't think, because again, it places the power back into the hands of people where it belongs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not, they want the opposite of that, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it scares them, if I'm being honest. Moving on. So after I've looked at the parliamentary websites, and I thought, I looked at a few quotes, I started looking at education. I started looking at places where people were meant to be putting out this information, the correct information. So this information here I got from a place called Constitution Unit, and it was a slide from somewhere explaining what the UK Constitution is. And it's just more of the same stuff from the parliamentary websites. So again, if it's found everywhere and it's being repeated, people do start to accept it. So again, if you look at the bottom one, it's just taken from the parliamentary website. Parliamentary sovereignty, the ultimate lawmaking power vested in the UK Parliament to create or abolish any law, is commonly regarded as the defining principle of the British Constitution. Again, the UK Constitution is largely written, but in different documents. It's never been codified. I don't know. It has to be. It is written down. So again, it's misleading. It's found in leading statutes, the complete opposite of the truth. So we can see where they're really trying hard to put this out there and saturate all sources of information with this narrative. Again, we know parliamentary sovereignties come from the Bill of Rights, who we look each saying, again, Parliament, supreme lawmaking body in the country. It's funny here because it's like Parliament under the English Constitution. So they're referring to the Bill of Rights as the English Constitution and the right to make or unmake any law. There's no mention of the Magna Carta. There's no mention of trial by jury. It's just, when I started unearthing this, I could see straight away that there was loads of stuff that just didn't sit right with me. So the more I dug into this stuff, the more lies I found, really.
I mean, it's interesting as well, isn't it? They talk about the Bill of Rights, and as we know, you've gone through that quite extensively. They're taking anything of any substance out of it. So they're claiming it's this constitutional statute, but it's got nothing really in it that's constitutional anymore. Certainly
No.
of any weight that would give us the power.
I think the whole like constitutional statute is to give it some sort of special power. It's just another play by the establishment to try and promote it. Everywhere I look, like parliamentary supremacy, again, the authority comes from the Bill of Rights. I thought this one was interesting. No one can limit the lawmaking power of any future parliament. It is impossible, therefore, for any parliament to pass a permanent law, or in other words, to entrench an act of parliament. So that says itself that statute law it's limited. It's not a constitution is permanent. It can't be amended. It can't be changed in any way unless it was like by the whole of the population, the mass of the people. Parliament just can't like put their hand up and say, look, Article 39, don't quite like that. Can we take that out? It's ridiculous, isn't it? What basically happened?
Exactly what's been happening, yeah.
What they've done is they threw the back door with the various versions and rewrites of the Magna Carta and the statute versions. They've done that and then started slowly repealing aspects of the Magna Carta, trying to give themselves legitimacy to do that because it's now statute law. It just can't be done. That is illegal. No, it's definitely breaching constitutional law. You know, and I've got a quote actually. It puts it into perspective. It was a conversation in the House of Commons. I think it was about like football hooliganism, and it was like 2000 or something. And there was an earl in there that was basically saying, "I'm happy to amend the Magna Carta." Just saying it that easy, as if it's not an issue. We can just take certain things away and all that. And then I think it's Lord Renton. It's on a later slide. He comes up and he says, I just want to say, basically, Parliament doesn't have any sort of authority to amend Magna Carta. It predates Parliament. It predates the first Parliament. So how can it just can't be done? It's just, there's so much evidence to prove what these people are doing is treason and high treason in some instances, because they've been made aware of it by a lot of people. So to continue to act on it is high treason. Yeah, I started, it was shock to me. I was gobsmacked at the amount of stuff that I was coming across. And obviously through other people's research, I read a couple of books that obviously everyone must have heard of William Keat now and the exposure that he's getting. A lot of this information came from him as well. But when I started to read about the Magna Carta, I've got to say that it was David Robinson at the beginning. There wasn't really a lot of people out there that was doing that. David Robinson was like seasoned buildings and that at one point, and you can see them videos on YouTube. So move on. So moving on to the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was established during the Glorious Revolution of 1688. King James II was abusing his powers. So at this time, kings thought like they had the divine right to do whatever they wanted to do. Proper tyranny, basically. So King James was deposed and William and Mary took the throne. Declaration of Rights was drawn up and once enacted became the Bill of Rights, 1689. So I'm going to make a few points on the Bill of Rights here just to give people a little bit of clarity on certain things. It might open their eyes, it might not. But I know a lot of people believe in this rule of law and believe in the Bill of Rights, and that's fine. But I just wanted to make these points. So the Bill of Rights, 1688-9, is referred to by many as a constitutional document that granted the people their liberties. So first and foremost, it was an act of Parliament. So it can never be a constitution because we know, like statutes, how limited it is. It's susceptible to amendments, to repeals, as we've seen right throughout history. So to refer to it as our constitution or constitutional is just false as far as I'm concerned, on the basis that it was a bill. It started as a bill. So moving on, which can be amended or repealed legitimately, like I've said, the constitution is permanent and should not be susceptible to amendments unless by the great mass of the people. Like I've said,
That says it all, really, doesn't it?
we can look into it deeper maybe another time, but major difference between statute law and constitutional law. A constitution is like a permanent thing. Statute law isn't.
Yeah.
No statute law is, because, as I've said, it's susceptible to amendments or even later statutes that might like contradict earlier statutes, like that kind of stuff. That's where the whole implied repeal and all that kind of stuff comes from. Moving on. The Bill of Rights 1688-9 was established by the Estates. So the belief that Parliament can legitimately write a constitution that grants the people their rights and freedoms is to accept it has authority over us, over its creator. So if we're going to accept the Bill of Rights, then we're basically saying Parliament can legitimately write this kind of stuff and grant people rights and freedoms. Looking at it logically, in Parliament, government and all that was created by the people. So to now suggest that government and Parliament has power over its creator is ludicrous to me. It's just common sense, to be fair. So it is to me. I don't know. I know a lot of other people do believe that, but I don't know if you've experienced it, Gavin, but is a division there?
Yeah.
Like I see it on Twitter a lot as well. People who are like, yeah, we believe, like even with Charles's coronation and stuff that he said, and people are they're looking at it and Bill of Rights, and now we can use this and that. It's fine, but it doesn't hide the fact that it's not a constitution. It's not constitutional. We've got a constitution, but people at their side stepping it. I don't know whether it's because there isn't enough information out there at the moment. But if you do look at these slides and you do go back after this video and revisit it, most importantly, don't take my word for it. Just pick up the history books, look at it. It's all there in black and white.
Okay, can I just come in and just say something there? Because there may be some folks watching this and they're going, hang on a minute. On one minute, you're saying, get out there, use the courts and sue people and look at these statutes and use them, etc. And that is absolutely right. I am saying that, but I want to just clarify. I look at this, we are in this situation we're in. And if you want to fight back, because the pen is mightier than the sword, certainly my opinion, you've got to use the tools and the weapons that you're presented with. And in our case, those are the tools and the weapons that we are presented with. So it makes sense to me that if they have some element of power, and they do because we can sue these people, then we should obviously use them. But it also doesn't change the facts of the matter that Damien's presenting right here and what they actually truly mean. And so this is why I feel it's important this information is out there and we're at the very least having this discussion and we are looking into the history here, because unless we're absolutely blind, we know something's wrong. We know this stuff goes back a long time. And so isn't this the moment in time that we put some effort into actually understanding that truth? Because ultimately, we aren't going to have constitutional rule of law here unless enough people understand that we have that constitution and we stand on it, therefore to bring back the power that enables us, the people, to wield. Yeah, just my 2 pennies there, guys. I just wanted to just explain where I stand on this stuff. Back to you, Damien.
No problems, almost. No problems at all. So the Bill of Rights asserted Parliament's own powers and authority. So just to touch on that briefly, like what's written in the Bill, they don't have authority or jurisdiction to write themselves into. Again, as it's been stated before, the difference between statute law and constitutional law. The Magna being our constitution, there's no way Parliament could assert their own powers into the constitution. But that's exactly what they've done using the Bill of Rights. They've asserted their own powers and then called it constitutional and give it all kinds of titles, constitutional statutes, like protections, or like a kind of platform to say that this is the document. It's just a play on words to start with. But to me, it's just more deception, taking people down the wrong path. Like, my take on this, and I have got nothing against, I've done it myself. I continue to do it in some instances, using certain statutes and all that are within the legal system. But what I'm saying is, if we get back to the main issue of our constitution being buried, basically, and we start having that conversation and it's in consciousness, then maybe things will change. That's how I see it. What we're experiencing now, I just see as, I know this might sound crazy because loads of people are fighting and all that, but why engage in it? It's a completely fraudulent setup. And to a certain extent, are we encouraging it by doing it? That's my 10 cents worth.
It's a catch-22, definitely.
There is two paths, and maybe the two of them together will slowly create change. I'm not suggesting anything different from that, but what I'm saying is that people should take this stuff seriously. We do have a constitution, and it is alive and it is powerful as well. I would go as far to say that we could use the Magna Carta, and we could use history, and we could use things that have happened, especially with when we joined the EU, when the Magna Carta was used, and when the hereditary baron petitioned the Queen. All that stuff happened, yet nobody talks about it. It was even reported on in national newspapers, and it was reported. There was a little paper cutting, and it was on the news for 30 seconds, and then it's been forgotten about. What's happened is Article 61's been invoked. Anything after that now is just illegitimate until we get some sort of redress. That's the crux of it. That's what people should be talking about, having that conversation.
Completely agree.
Moving on. The Bill of Rights removed the unlawful impaneling of juries to get a particular verdict. So what it did was, because the king was basically stacking the juries to get particular verdicts and all, that's where that comes from. But again, there's no mention of trial by jury. The people's sovereignty as juror is not in the Bill of Rights. Talking about it as constitutional, again, it is a complete farce. So it also removes the trial by jury justice system and the people's sovereignty as juror along with it. It contravenes common law. So there isn't really anything to do with common law in the Bill of Rights. It disregards the constitutional protections afforded to the people. So is it treason? Can we say that? Can we say something that's regarded constitutional and it's there for people's rights and liberties as a treasonous document? It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It's crazy to say it, but yeah, the evidence certainly seems to point to that being the case.
The Bill of Rights express some constitutional values and principles. So the stuff like any fines or forfeitures before conviction, stuff like that, it reads well. In parts, you can't say it doesn't, because it does. But what I'm saying, was that a ploy? Was that an attempt to remove trial by jury and then put this other stuff in to sugarcoat it, to get people to accept the whole bill, divert people's attention away from what was missing from the Declaration? It just makes you think. This is something that I've been thinking about, and that's why I put it in brackets, just to get people thinking, to see it that it might not be what you think.
Yeah.
So trial by jury and equal justice, it's been replaced by trial by judge and magistrates court.
And if ever you've been in the magistrate courts, you know what that experience generally. It's certainly not a place to find justice.
Exactly. You can't even be heard in a magistrate's court.
No.
But if we were to bring back a true constitutional system, a system of equity, with a trial by jury justice system, then that would make you and me the final arbiters of law. You wouldn't be trying to get some judge to listen to what you've got to say or to take evidence into consideration. We'd be making them decisions ourselves. Just normal, common, everyday people.
On that note, actually, Damien, if I may, just for those that are watching this that perhaps don't know what the trial by jury thing means, because a lot of us that are waking up, you think of Crown Court, don't you? That's got this jury in there, criminal cases. But what is trial by jury actually?
So trial by jury, under our constitution, trial by jury basically gives people the opportunity to challenge the lawfulness of the law, as well as has the defendants actually broke that law. So we could actually be sitting on a jury and say, okay, he's broke that law, but that it's unjust. It doesn't stand as any law as far as like we can see. And if you discuss that and agree on that, then, that defendant walks free. That's basically what it is. You're judging on the lawfulness of the law as well as the defendants with the power to annul that law, basically just overrule it. And so if we were looking at something that's happened recently, let's say they tried to introduce mandatory vaccinations for COVID. So a jury of 12, I'm pretty sure, I don't have all the answers, by the way, but I'm pretty sure it would be extensively tested under them conditions to try and get a pattern of verdicts. If a defendant is being found not guilty 100 times out of 100 hearings, then that legislation needs to be annulled. It needs to be slowly being removed from the statute book because it's clearly not a law. It's not a fair law. It's not based on a system of equity, is it? If everyday people and people not guilty of that. But in a sense, if they tried to bring in mandatory vaccinations, then trial by jury justice system would be a defense mechanism against that. Because even though that might have been given royal assent and it's been written by parliaments and they've passed it in that sense, once it hits the court system and we judge on it, we're the final arbiters of law under that system. So we rule whether that's just or unjust. And as I say, I don't know, I'm still learning myself. I don't know 100% how that would look in a system. I would suggest that it would just be being extensively tested to see some sort of pattern. But yeah, that's how I see it. I hope does that explain?
Yeah, it does. It really does. What we're saying then, if we just simplified that to a lot of the folks watching this channel, certainly are challenging the council tax, but that would certainly then be a piece of legislation that we could essentially challenge by trial by jury and essentially repeal because it's
so how long would council tax last?
It would have already been done
because it's unlawful. It's an unlawful tax.
Yeah.
So it would slowly disappear, wouldn't it? Because it would just it would be a farce, wouldn't it? If we continue to, council tax onto people, even though people were just walking away from council tax bills in a court of law because the jury was saying, hang on a minute, no, that's not fair. He hasn't done anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, very powerful. That to me, out of this whole thing, is the most jaw-dropping for me because I've never experienced a system where people have a voice because we don't. We have to fight to be heard.
Yeah.
No, we have to go to loads of hearings. We have to do loads of documents. We have to serve all kinds of notices. Do we even get any sort of response a lot of the time? Sometimes we don't. So a lot of it is ignored, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that whole uphill battle just to be heard, that would disappear as well.
Yeah.
All these crooks in the establishments, in courts, crooked judges, whoever, people writing this legislation, they would slowly disappear in this system as well because they'd get found out because you'd also have private prosecution. So if you're sitting in parliament or you're writing legislation that's unjust, I know it's unjust and it's not, it goes against our constitution, it's not constitutional, and you're going to get prosecuted. You could find yourself in jail. So you're going to wean out all these psychopaths within the system as well because of the private prosecution. Because when people start getting found not guilty of certain policies, laws, whatever you want to call them, then it's going to make people look like psychopaths, like tyrants. Yeah. Even your head of state is going to look silly if he's given royal assent to something that's unconstitutional. So what happens to him or she? They just get removed from office. They get replaced. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
If you're not performing your duties, then I'm sorry, but you've got to go.
Off you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I envision it anyway. This is a very good one. The Declaration of Rights that accompanies the Bill of Rights was not signed or sealed So the declaration that became Bill of Rights, it was never signed or sealed by anybody. So who's it binding on?
I didn't even know that. Wow.
I found this. I read a book called Democracy Defined by Ken
Right.
Duke, and I don't know whether, I can't remember whether it's in the book, but he's got a website as well, and it goes into the Bill of Rights in depth, and that is a very good place to start for anyone who wants to dig deeper. A lot of this
Let's just say that book again. So we'll flash that up on the screen. What was the book again?
So the book is called Democracy Defined, the Manifesto, and it's by a guy called Ken Duke. Amazing man. He's put all this stuff together. It's not just stuff about the Bill of Rights. He's gone right back into history. And yeah, it's a very interesting read. But I'd recommend that to anyone. That's a perfect place to start. And obviously, I'd say William Keith as well.
Yeah.
Watch his videos because he explains this better than anybody. Again, he touches on stuff, not just constitutional law. He goes into natural law. It's quite deep. I'm just learning. I'm not comfortable talking about natural law at the minute because I haven't read that much about it. But I know that it's intertwined with everything that we're discussing here, that sense of right and wrong. So another quote here: a nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason within. So is that what we're experiencing? Everything that's been done throughout time to slow dismantling of the Constitution and all that, is this treason from within? We haven't been defeated in war or anything like that. It's our own people who are representing us or meant to be representing us that are performing what's going on now.
What is it they say? Infiltration, not invasion.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's pretty
basically.
clear that's been happening.
Wolf in sheep's clothing. So moving on to, because I wanted to mention this because it's got a lot to do with the Bill of Rights as well. Because when we joined the EU, everybody who was against it was looking at the Bill of Rights for remedy, for the answers. And again, I was the same. The Magna Carta didn't even enter my mind. I was looking at, there's a guy called John Bingley. He's like a constitutional expert, brilliant guy, another great man who he dissects the Bill of Rights. But all these people that were using the Bill of Rights, it didn't do anything. It didn't stop anything, is my argument. Even when you look at the provisions within the Bill of Rights, I do declare that no foreign prince, person, prelate, state, or potentate have or ought to have any jurisdiction, power, superiority, preeminence, or authority, ecclesiastical or spiritual, within this realm. Now, that to me, it's powerful, isn't it? Like when I read that back, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Exactly.
Given the context of this provision, how did our establishments transfer sovereignty to the European Union? The Treaty of Rome, the Lisbon Treaty, the Nice Treaty that obviously escalated to Article 61 being invoked. We give up jurisdiction of laws and courts, clearly. If you, like I've read, like certain parts of these treaties, the Treaty of Nice and the Treaty of Rome, and it's so bad, and it reads so bad as well. It's just that, who's going to read that? When all this was going on, who's going to read it? Because we're conditioned to think that our governments have got our best interests at heart. So we don't. We trust them, that we're programmed to do that in a way.
Yeah, completely. And also that you're almost programmed to think that this is all very complicated stuff and these are smart people and they know what they're doing. So they give them that power.
Yeah, I think they rely on our stupidity and ignorance.
Yeah.
Just to accept to a certain extent, again, that's what we've got now, haven't we? If we look at like gas and electric and utility bills and all that stuff, and these people just pluck figures out of the air. My bill's just gone to, I think they're trying to direct debit, or they want to, like £350 a month. And you know how hot it's been outside.
Yeah.
And we're meant to just go, yeah, that's okay. That sounds fair. Even though that's like double or triple the highest bill I've ever paid in history for gas or electric.
Ridiculous, isn't it?
But this
Absolutely
is the kind
ridiculous.
of stuff that they're pulling, and people, I don't know if you experienced that, but I go to work and all that, and people talk about, oh, can't survive and bills are going up, but nobody does anything about it.
I know. We're a
Don't
nation of moaners.
challenge it, or
yeah, absolutely.
don't comply, or if people just understood that massive people hold the key to all this, it would just end tomorrow.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
with mass non-compliance. We wouldn't even have to dissect any information. We just need to say, no, we're not doing it. That's it. But this is what we've got at the minute. And I suppose, hopefully, people will start to slowly understand what's going on.
It is happening, mate, isn't it? It's definitely happening. Not as quick as we want, but it's definitely happening.
It's definitely happening. As I said, I don't think it's on a big enough scale it needs to be, but it's definitely happening. When I go on Twitter and I look, it's just a mass of people tweeting stuff about COVID, about global warming, about chemtrails. That consciousness it's rising, definitely.
Yeah.
So this whole thing with what our government did, our Tory all governments, which makes you think the agenda stays the same, doesn't it? It doesn't, we're going, oh, Labour need to get in, Conservatives need to get in. But what actually changes when any of these parties who are meant to be opposing, what changes actually happen? We don't see any real change because the political party might change, but the agenda stays the same. The globalization and the destruction of, as we've already touched on, sovereign nations is clearly happening. Did I hear right that somebody was saying that we need to have another referendum on Brexit?
I think that's the plan, isn't it? They're going to, whether this happens or not, but maybe there'll be a snap election and then maybe Labour get in and then it goes that direction for a little while.
It's just almost, let's keep pushing until we get the verdict we want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Although, like, in my opinion, Brexit is illegitimate anyway, because to recognise any of these treaties is to accept the treason that's gone on.
Yeah, great.
If you look at it deeper, people are discussing stuff that they shouldn't even be discussing.
Yeah.
They need to go.
And that's the thing, actually, just to like a note, these folks out there, very switched on, intelligent people, but they're still stuck in that, I'm a conservative, I'm a Labour supporter, I'm this, I'm that. And all you're doing is playing into this bullshit and enabling this very system that we're hopefully now providing you some evidence to show is absolutely corrupted and illegitimate. So it's a case of we've got to step back a little bit, I think.
I do. I agree with you on so many levels there with what you just said. But what you need to understand as well is that there's different types of people. There's people that want to be ruled. Unfortunately, they accept the status quo. They need people to make these decisions for them because not having them people there scares them. It's touching on like statism and that, and people who are statist, they believe in that. They believe in state control. So you have got them people in the general population as well to deal with that don't want any change.
They've got to be a minority, surely, now, because for me, they're an enemy.
I'd hope it was a minority, but again, it's the unknown, isn't it? It's, how can the people rule? We'd have like anarchy. Do you know what I mean? Like anarchy in the sense that we think people are going to be looting and pillaging,
which is complete crap.
It is. We're going to be making decisions for ourselves.
Exactly.
We're finally be able to suggest how we want to be ruled, or not ruled, that's the wrong word.
How we want to live.
Yeah, how we want society to be, basically. So we don't have to agree with having a state education. Parents might want to educate their own children. They might want to have the ability to educate their own children. That's difficult in itself, isn't it, with people having to work and whatnot. We might want to go to Jerry down the road, who's just opened up a school and he's put forward his curriculum, which is all about constitutional law and being awake and not having tyrant governments and all that. And that might appeal to people, like having the tools to live in a decent society where you can enjoy life. You can enjoy the abundance of life. Nobody's controlling anything. British Gas aren't saying you owe us £3,000 for a month's worth of energy. That type of shit.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. So just to touch on that, so given what the European Communities Act of 1972 did, like the Heath administration, what did the Bill of Rights do? Even though it's got all these provisions saying the European Union is obviously a state, and it's saying no foreign prince, prelate state. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So the Bill of Rights, as far as I'm concerned, was just overruled because, again, it being statute law, something that they've written, the estates, they're in control of it, aren't they?
Doesn't that not point to a subverted judiciary? That would even happen and they could do that. Because if people were standing on the Bill of Rights and we've got that statement at the very beginning, which kind of says it all, and it did nothing, that would talk to a judiciary that isn't truly independent.
Yeah, you're right. There isn't anything independent, is there? It's just we say you do, and that's the end of it. We've touched on court. They're legitimate, basically. They're not there for people to have a say. They're not there for justice. They're just there to administer people and take money off them, basically. That's how I see the
Agreed.
system we've got. Judges are just enforcing legislation, really. They're not independent, are they? More than anyone with the experience you've had in courts of law. How that goes, regardless of what information, what evidence you've got, it just comes down. This piece of legislation says this. That's basically what it is. It doesn't matter what tools you've got in your bag. It's just like legislation on its own, a piece of paper has the power to punish, and everybody just follows orders. And that's fundamentally what we've got. So yeah, that's how I see it. I just see whatever we've got in the sense of to protect us is basically not worth a carrot. The Bill of Rights and stuff like that, with what's happened, it just doesn't hold any weight. Again, I've put in brackets, is this treason at a constitutional level? So what our establishments did and have done and have continued to do, is that not treason at like common law, at a constitutional level? Should they not be standing in the dock answering for crimes, really? Because what they've done is they gave away people's sovereignty to the EU, because they've just started ruling us with how many pieces of legislation is there? Thousands, probably. The amount of control that they've had over the years. Again, how can we give away jurisdiction of our courts and laws to the EU without having the conversation about treason? It's ridiculous. At one point, they even were trying to bring out the EU, their own constitution, within one of these treaties. I don't know which one it was now. But something happened somewhere. I don't know whether it was accepted or what. I don't think it was, but that's what they were trying to do at one point. Again, given the prerogative powers of the Queen, which is expressed through royal assent, should she have assented to something that was going to transfer power, jurisdiction, sovereignty to the EU? I'm not bad-mouthing the Queen or the King. I don't even know what's going on with them. Like I'll put here, did she have a choice? Has she ever been Queen? Is the crown been usurped? Is she just a bystander now when it comes to anything like this? It's definitely worth thinking about, because again, with what's happened and us joining the EU and all the various acts that have been passed, that she hasn't challenged anybody on at any point. I don't know. I haven't got any explanation for that. Other than the fact that I believe the Bill of Rights doesn't hold any weight. And I believe from the parliamentary websites that royal assent isn't even a thing now, like true royal assent. Because if you're getting authority from the Bill of Rights, that says the King or Queen can't execute or dispense any law. So how can she refuse assent if within the Bill of Rights it's saying you can't do that? You can't dispense any law.
Exactly. And that's the question, isn't it? Because if Parliament's now claiming it's just some sort of, it has no weight, it's just a formality now, royal assent's a formality. At what point in history did somebody say that was the case? And who had the authority to say that was the case, given what he said in the Bill of Rights?
Yeah, exactly. I think the estates and the Bill of Rights, how it came about, that was the power grab.
Yeah,
that was the opportunity to bring them into a powerful position where they could just do what they want without even, because royal assent, even though everybody like goes on about the monarch, and I know a lot of people are probably anti-monarch and they want to get rid of them and all that, but that's a part of this system.
Yeah.
That's a defense mechanism within our constitution. The king or queen shouldn't be given royal assent to anything that's unconstitutional. So that's a defense mechanism. They're there to serve our needs. They're there to protect our sovereignty.
Correct. Yeah.
They hold office. A duty of that is royal assent. And that should be separate from whatever parliaments. You know, if they're trying to pass law, then that should have to go through that. That should have to go through royal assent. That should be scrutinized. That should be advised as saying, look, that's unconstitutional. We all know, I'll go on to the next slide in a minute, it goes on about and all that. We know that they know they've committed forms of treason, and they knew the implications joining the EU, what it was going to do to this country's sovereignty. They knew that. So that's openly doing something, even knowing that it is unconstitutional, that it is.
Yeah.
I know it's a heavy word, but to me, it is treason.
Yeah.
So we'll move on that. They know they've committed forms of treason.
Do you find the legal system overwhelming and wish you had the knowledge and skill sets to control judges, persuade attorneys, and win your case? Well, look no further. Sovereign Empowerment is proud to announce our partnership with Dr. Frederick Graves so that we can bring you the Jurisdictionary Law course, How to Win in Court, your ultimate resource for mastering the courtroom. Unlock powerful case-winning strategies as you learn to control judges like never before. This comprehensive course eliminates guesswork and empowers you to navigate the legal landscape with absolute confidence. With step-by-step instructions, flowcharts, and outlines, you'll have all the tools you need to persuade and control judges in any case or court. Learn from a seasoned attorney with over 40 years of winning experience, who has distilled his expertise into this comprehensive program. Access everything you need in one single package, including sample forms, video seminars, audio clips, and in-depth case-winning classes. Learn at your own pace, anytime, anywhere. Our 24/7 online access allows you to tailor your learning experience to fit your schedule. Access the course on your smartphone, tablet, or computer and become a legal master whenever and wherever you want. Benefit from a suite of powerful tools, including a free online legal research tool, a legal dictionary with common sense definitions, and an exclusive Q&A forum to connect with fellow students and obtain expert guidance. Good people have suffered too long at the hands of power because they just didn't know how to fight back. Now, in a matter of just a few days, you can acquire the tools and knowledge that takes law students years to achieve. Can't afford a lawyer? No problem. With the Jurisdictionary Law course, you'll gain the skills to win your case without expensive legal representation. Alternatively, equip your own legal console with the tools and tactics to fight effectively on your behalf. Level the playing field and secure your victory. No matter what court, civil or criminal, conquer any courtroom challenge with ease. This step-by-step guidance ensures a quick and straightforward learning experience, empowering you to navigate the legal system with bulletproof confidence. As a testament to your newfound legal expertise, you'll have the opportunity to complete a final exam and receive an honorary law degree upon successful completion of the course. Showcase your achievement and establish yourself as a force to be reckoned with in the legal arena. Dr. Graves believes everyone deserves access to legal knowledge. That's why we offer the Jurisdictionary Law course at an unbeatable price. For less than the cost of a 1-hour legal consultation, you'll gain unlimited access to this complete program for up to 2 full years. Take control of your legal battles without breaking the bank. How to Win in Court has become the most trusted law course worldwide since 1997. Don't miss out on this exclusive opportunity to gain the upper hand in the courtroom. Enroll in the official Jurisdictionary Law course today and unleash your legal power. Click the link in the description below to become legally empowered today.